Hey everybody, welcome to probably the longest running weekly variety channel on YouTube. Been making it for since 2007, 1,300 videos. To this week we're going to have a very fun, interesting video. We're going to have the 20 bad car noises for new drivers. There aren't any good car noises. They're all bad, but some of them are worse than others. I'm not a car mechanic. Don't play one on YouTube, but I have been driving for over 50 years, and I've had a lot of things happen to me. Almost all these noises, except a couple, have happened to me or somebody I know. So I thought we would have some fun. If you're a new car driver, when I was a new car driver, I remember when I was a kid, got my first car, an old beat up car, and it was making this clunking noise. And I went to my neighbor who was older than me and knew a lot about cars, and I said, "Bill," said, "what's wrong with my car? It makes this clunking noise." It says, "You don't know what's wrong with your car? I'll tell you what's wrong with your car. You got an old clunker." So he was no help. It was no help. This is hopefully going to help. We're going to start from the most common, most people know, to some of the most rare and uncommon noises. Like for example, you put your foot on the brake and the horn blows. Yeah, you thought you knew that one, but I know you don't. It took me a long time to figure that one out. So let's get started. Number one, you go to your car, you put your key in the ignition, you turn it, and you hear a click, click, click. Most people know that's probably the battery, but it could also just be your battery has got a bad connection. You need to clean your cables. But sometimes it's not the battery. But how you need to test it. If you don't have a tester, what you can do is honk the horn or turn your lights. If the horn blows really strong or the lights come on strong, probably it's not your battery. But sometimes you're unlucky. It's just enough juice to blow your horn or turn on your lights, but not to start your car. So you would have to test the battery. But you can also find out that you have a problem with your starter or the solenoid. The solenoid can be bad. Sometimes the starter is bad. You keep clicking and it'll click, 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 but eventually it'll start, and then you say, well, it's fixed now. It worked. And you drive it for a couple of days and it goes again. Well, one day you're going to do click, 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 and for 10 minutes, and it's never going to start. But if you have a hammer, go to Home Depot or Harbor Freight, get you a big sledgehammer, get under the car, have someone turn the key, and you bang on the starter. That starter has, I think it's called a Bendix, and when you turn the key, it goes to turn the Bendix, and as it spins, the centrifugal force opens it up and it engages your starter. And when you stop turning the key, it turns off, and the starter will spin your motor. So it's if you bang on it, sometimes you can get it loose, but that's not a good long-term fix. But also you can have a problem with your ignition with your keys. I had a girlfriend; she had 10 pounds of stuff on her keys. It screwed up her ignition. So that's basically your battery or your ignition if you just hear the click, click, click. But now let's say you turn the key, number two, and it's the engine comes on, but you hear this really loud squealing noise. It's squealing really loud. You're not accelerating, you're not putting your foot on the gas, you just turn the key, and it's a really loud squealing noise. That's almost always your power steering belt. Sometimes it could be the power steering pump too, but it's usually the belt. Let's say you've had the car sitting for a long time, or it's just maybe really cold out or something, or the belts are old, or your tensioner is bad. That's usually just a belt, but you're not accelerating, and it's just right from the get-go. And usually after it goes for half a minute or so, it'll wear out, and you won't hear the noise anymore. But if you continue to hear the noise, yeah, you have a problem. You need to get that fixed real soon. You turned the key, you didn't hear the squeaking noise, but you hear a tapping noise. This is not good. You can have a really light tapping noise. If you have a really light tapping noise, a little clacking noise, sometimes you get lucky and you just are low on oil. Sometimes you get lucky. Now, if it's idling and you hear this light tapping, light clacking, it also could be your improper fuel combustion. But sometimes your valve clearances are bad. You need to have your valves adjusted. And sometimes it's worse. You have some serious problems with your engine. But check your oil first. Maybe you get lucky. I had a girlfriend. She had an old, when the first Honda Civics came out, she didn't put any oil in there. I checked it for her, and she didn't have anything on, and she was still driving it. I don't know. That was an amazing car. So hopefully it's maybe got some bad fuel, your ratio is bad or something. You could be fixed with a tune-up, or you need some oil. But maybe maybe you want to start thinking about getting another car soon. Okay, you turn the key, you don't hear squealing, but you go to start to back out, and you hear this moaning and groaning noise, and it's coming from the engine in the front. That's usually once again your power steering. This is, I should say, when you're backing out and you're turning, you're hearing this noise. It's a moaning noise or groaning noise when you're backing out and you're turning the wheel or you're going forward. That's almost always going to be your power steering. Okay, we've got another one where you got squealing. You're accelerating. You don't hear it when you're just idling, but you're going down the road and you're starting to accelerate. This can be, once again, your belts. It could be your pump. You have your belt tensioners that keep tension, the right tension on your belts. That could be bad. Could be alternator. Alternator could be bad, or the power steering pump. You're accelerating and you're starting to hear this really loud. It's a screeching, squealing, wailing sound, and it's coming from the front. So number 6, you hear a hissing. One of my brothers had a small pygmy rattlesnake he kept in a cigar box for a few days. And one day I was driving with him and he had the cigar box in the car, and I said I got worried because I didn't want to be in the car with the snake, and he said, "Don't worry, it wasn't in the box anymore. It got out. He couldn't find it." So if you hear a hissing noise, it's usually your radiator, but you would find that out by looking at your dash and see if you're overheating. But you can also have an air leak. Your vacuum system or your BC valve could be bad. But or you could have a pygmy rattlesnake in your car. Okay, you're driving down the road and you're accelerating, and you're hearing a rattling and a knocking or a pinging. This is not good. This is not one of the good noises you want to hear. This could be pre-ignition. You could have worn engine bearings. You could have your timing chain, your timing belt could be loose and slapping. Sometimes you can have a problem with your gas or just need a tune-up, and you could have this fixed, but this is a serious problem. If you're going down the road and you're accelerating and you're hearing this a lot, or it's a pinging. Sometimes you can just change the octane of your gas. That might help. But this is one of the serious noises. So, like pre-ignition, detonation problems, those are kind of serious. You want to get that looked at. Number 10, you're starting the car and you're putting it in gear. If you have a manual and you're hearing this crunching, grinding noises, that's, if you're lucky, very often that's your clutch. If you have a manual, sooner or later your clutch is going to go out. That's part of maintenance. You're going to have to get that fixed. It's not cheap, but it's something that's normal. Eventually, your clutch is going to wear out on a manual. If automatic, you could have some more serious problems. But sometimes you get lucky. It's not always the worst when it comes to your transmission. You can. It's very important if you have a really good mechanic to find a really good mechanic that can steer you to a good transmission expert, because it's very easy to be taken to the cleaners by a transmission repair. But it's not always the end of the world when you hear really crunching noise. It could be a lot of different things with your transmission, but that's usually the problem when you hear a grinding or crunching noise when you're shifting gears. You also almost always have this when you have a lot of high mileage on your car. Number 11, you put your foot on the brake and you hear this scraping, grinding noise. If you've never heard it before, usually your pads are worn and they have like a little tab that sticks out, so this gives you some time. You're wearing that off before you get to the pads, so you know you need to fix this soon. Otherwise, you're going to be wearing out your pads and then messing up the rest of your brakes. So that's normal Also, sometimes if your car's been sitting for a long time, you might hear that. Or if you went through some water and now you have a little rust, and if it goes away in a day, then it's not that big a problem. If you continue to hear that scraping noise when you put your foot on the brake, squealing, you need to know that you need a brake job soon. Number 12, I've never had this one before, thankfully. It's you put your foot on the brake and it's not responsive, and you hear this clunking, clattering noise. Usually something is broken. Your calipers are loose. There's something in your brake pads that are broken off. There's other things that could be wrong with your brakes, but yeah, you've got a brake problem. This is not a good sound, number 13, but it's a lucky sound because it's not that big of a deal. You're driving down the road and you hear like this whistling or just scraping, rattling. Sometimes you get a little stone in your brakes between the brake disc and the cover, and you think the worst is you think it's a wheel bearing because it's rotational, but it's just a little stone or something. It's not that often, not that common, but sometimes you get lucky, and that's all it was. You could just get that removed and you're good to go, you know. But there's not too many sounds like that. This one my brother had. When you go over a bump, you hear this clacking, clunking noise. You hear a clunking noise because you got a clunker. My brother had a VW, and he went over a bump. He would hear this terrible clunking noise, and I looked under his VW, and where the shock absorber was supposed to be attached to the car, there was no place for it to attach because it was all rusted away. So when he was going down the road, and it was like metal on metal, and it was just like, it scared me. But yeah, if you're going through a pothole and you hear a clunky noise, you have bad ball joints, you have the control arms that are bad, the stabilizer pins. It could be a lot of stuff, but usually it's your ball joints. So you can also, while the car is just sitting there, you could push down on it, and you could tell if you're getting a noise, and you can look under and see where it's coming from. Number 15, you hear a loud bang or explosion from the back of your car. You just had a backfire. What happens is you had some gas that came out and it was not burnt, and so it was either pre-detonation where your cylinder is extremely hot and it blew when it shouldn't be blowing, exploding, or else it went past your cylinder into like your exhaust, and now it's exploding. So that's not good. That's not good. You have a poor mix between your air and your fuel, and that needs to be addressed. But that's what's going on. Number 16, all of a sudden you hear, or maybe gradually, you start hearing this really loud, rasping, roaring noise from behind. Your exhaust system is going out. Maybe it fell out and now you hear like this giant noise from back. Your exhaust system is gone. You don't realize how good a job your muffler does in taking away sound until your muffler goes away. Also, sometimes you can hear this scraping, and that's because there's parts of your muffler or your heat shield that's dragging on the road. Good Lord, one time my mom and my family was going to pick up my brother late at night at the Homestead Air Force Base. He came home from overseas, from Vietnam, and we went to pick him up like 3 o'clock in the morning. We're going down US 1, and I'm in the back of this station wagon. I'm a little kid, and I'm seeing sparks come out the back. I hear this grinding noise. Mom keeps driving, and I'm yelling at her, the gas tank had fallen down underneath the car, and the sparks were coming out, and oh God, that was like a miracle. We didn't have a big problem. But yeah, if you hear big noise from the back, your exhaust system is gone. If you're driving, number 17, if you're driving down the road and you hear this howling, it's usually from behind. It's howling, a whirring noise. You've got a lot of different parts in the differential. It could be worn gears, but sometimes you have like these big tires that are not typical for your car, and people put them on Jeeps and stuff, and they make a whirring noise because just the size of the tires or so on, and it's not a car problem, but you're not supposed to hear a whirring, roaring noise rotational from behind it, but that's usually your differential. I'm sorry to tell you. Here is the classic clunker. Here's the classic clunker noise. You're driving down the road and you turn to the left or you turn to the right and you hear this clunk clunk like you're going over a railroad track. That's usually your CV joint. You have, look under your car, you see these rubber boots that go over parts that attach to your wheels from your axle, and it's like when your CV joint wears out, you'll see grease coming out, or maybe your boot is tore, and that's not too expensive, and it's not like a huge major thing, but when you turn, clunk, 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 you got a clunker. But yeah, it's usually your CV. You could have your suspension, or you could have steering issues or drivetrain, but usually it's your CV joints. Okay, I told you about the brake. You put your foot on the brake and the horn blows. I had a VW camper. I changed the light bulbs in the back. The brake lights. You have dual element and single element bulbs, and I put the wrong ones in, and somehow that rewired the system on the car, so when you put your foot on the brake, the horn would blow. It took me a long time to figure out. The last one, bad noise, is you're 7 years old and your mom is driving you to first grade, and all of a sudden you hear this eek, and it's your mom freaking out because she's steering and the steering wheel is no longer connected to the car and it won't steer. She had a Plymouth. She painted it herself. It was old. Yeah, the steering wheel came off while she was driving. So those are, I think, my 20 different bad car noises for new drivers. I know I'm leaving out some. Hope you enjoyed these. And if you're a mechanic or you're a specialist in any of these areas and you know I did something wrong, please leave a comment. We're all in this together. I'm not the world's foremost authority on cars, but I have been driving a lot of clunkers for over 50 years and have come across a lot of noises and had a lot of fun trying to get back on the road. Guys, put on new stuff every week. Been doing it for, gosh, since 2007. And got over 1,300 videos, and I think it's the longest running variety channel on YouTube. And hope you had some fun and you learned a few things, and come back. We'll do this again next week. See what we'll talk about next week. All right, guys, take care. It's been fun. See you out there. I'll tell you what's wrong with your car. You got an old clunker.